the other distinguished speakers here today to shine a spotlight on the deadly threat faced by thousands of Christians in Nigeria. I would like to thank President Trump for prioritizing this issue and for his leadership on the global stage in calling for urgent action to defend Christians in Nigeria, to combat extremism, and to bring a stop to violence against those who simply want to exercise their natural right to freedom of religion or belief.
Finally, Nicki Minaj finally speaks on this Christian genocide going on in Nigeria. This American rapper, Nicki Minaj, he has been scheduled to speak yesterday. So listen to what she said, Nicki Minaj. He finally speak on the issues. At least, just take your time, listen to what he said, because this is what celebrity in Nigerians, artists, celebrities, supposed to be doing. But none of them is doing anything about it. I understand the reason. But America is not speaking for us. America is trying to intervene. America is doing at least using their social media platforms to create awareness, to speak for Nigeria, to speak up for Nigerians. And Donald Trump is coming to intervene to help us with the problem we are going through in Nigeria. Yet, I've not seen any Nigerian celebrity who has been talking about this genocide. And maybe I didn't see some of their videos. I'm not seeing all these celebrity who has these large followers. We're not seeing them, right? But yesterday, when Very Dark Man and Mr. Jollof they fought on the plane. You see, a lot of people are talking about it, even using it. Some celebrities, senior men in the industry are even using it to create content. But this Christian genocide, none of them, nobody is speaking about it. Nobody is using his or her platform to campaign, to create awareness about it, to say it's a Christian genocide going on in Nigeria. Can you imagine? Very Dark Man. They now prioritized the fight on the trade between two individuals over the Christian genocide going on in Nigeria, over the 25 girls that was adopted from a government school in Kebbi State. Do you understand? So listen to what Nicki Minaj said, and other panel who also speak on these issues. All these are the evidence that what Donald Trump is looking for, not what the Minister of Foreign Affairs said, not what Daniel Bwala is saying, not what that Bayo Nanoga is saying. Those people, you are not expecting the truth from them again. You cannot get the truth from the government. So this is what matters. Please listen and share this video. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
I stand here as a proud New Yorker with a deep sense of gratitude that we live in a country where we can freely and safely worship God regardless of one's creed, background, or politics. No group should ever be persecuted for practicing their religion, like I recently stated on social media. And we don't have to share the same beliefs in order for us to respect each other. We're way beyond thinking or expecting or assuming for, the person sitting next to you to have the exact same beliefs. We're beyond that. That's ridiculous. But that shouldn't make one person feel less safe than anyone in any room. Music has taken me around the globe. I have seen how people, no matter their language, culture, or religion, come alive when they hear a song that touches their soul. Religious freedom means we all can sing our faith regardless of who we are, where we live, and what we believe. But today, faith is under attack in way too many places. In Nigeria, Christians are being targeted, driven from their homes, and killed. Churches have been burned. Families have been torn apart, and entire communities live in fear constantly, simply because of how they pray. Sadly, this problem is not only a growing problem in Nigeria, but also in so many other countries across the world, and it demands urgent action. And I want to be clear. Protecting Christians in Nigeria is not about taking sides or dividing people. It is about uniting humanity. Nigeria is a beautiful nation with deep faith traditions and lots of beautiful barbs that I can't wait to see. When one's church, mosque, or place of worship is destroyed, everyone's heart should break just a little bit. And the foundation of the United Nations, with its core mandate to ensure peace and security, should shake. I am joined here today by peace builders, by faith leaders, by those who saw violence, saw rising intolerance, saw the threats clearly before us, and chose not to look the other way. I am inspired by their work to build interfaith ties, to see the humanity across the lines which might divide us, and to fight for security and liberty for all those who pray. I look forward to our discussion today, and I hope it will encourage deepened solidarity for us to urgently work together to ensure every person can enjoy the right to believe, to worship, and to live in peace. Barbs, I know you're somewhere listening. I love you so very much. You have been the ultimate light in my life and career for so long. I appreciate you, and I want to make it very clear once again that this isn't about taking sides. This is about standing up in the face of injustice. It's about what I've always stood for my entire career, and I will continue to stand for that. For the rest of my life, I will care if anyone, anywhere, is being persecuted for their beliefs. Thank you.
Please welcome our panelists for today's discussion. 6-time Emmy Award-winning Fox News anchor, Harris Faulkner. Senior Counsel for Global Religious Freedom with Alliance Defending Freedom International, Shone Nelson. Former Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director at the White House National Security Council and Senior Advisor to the President on International Religious Freedom, Sarah Macon. And finally, joining us virtually from Abuja, Nigeria, Reverend Gabriel Makan.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Nicki Minaj, wow. I wrote down what you said. Religious freedom means we all can sing our faith. So beautiful. So honored to be here with all of you. Reverend and Sarah and Sean, I want to give just a few scene-setting facts, if you'll grant me the grace to do so. Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa. As of 2025, so this is really up to date, an estimated 237.5 million people live in Nigeria. It's the 6th most populated country on the planet. And there is a lot at stake while we're here today. Half of all Nigerians are under the age of 18. Only 7% of the population is over the age of 50, and that means life is short for many. So when we talk about the systematic killing of Nigerian Christians, you must know they are mostly young girls, young boys, to young parents. Who will protect the Christians? That's why we're here today. Who leads Nigeria is an interesting question. The Nigerian president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a Muslim. It is a Muslim majority nation, about 53%. The other large religious group is Christian, about 44%. And sundry other faiths make up the smallest percentage. I note that Tinubu's wife, Remy, is a Christian, an ordained pastor. We'll see if that matters. We do know that Tinubu has rejected President Trump calling out the mass deaths in Nigeria, although the president has definitely gotten Tinubu's attention. Reportedly, in response to Trump, the Nigerian president has now recently promised to, quote unquote, fight terrorists through diplomatic engagement. And Ambassador Waltz and I were speaking earlier. There is some movement. You spoke of that today. But there are more than 7,000 Christians who have died from just January to August of this year. So now in mid-November, you can make that number bigger, sadly. So one might question Tinubu's timetable for those diplomatic conversations to happen, since he seems to think that diplomatic engagement can end this. There are currently now 22 radical Islamic terror groups in the country of Nigeria. Can you imagine 22 of those groups in this country? It's unbelievable. Thousands of them, some aligned with ISIS. The stakes are high. One more quick detail. Back to who holds the power in Nigeria. The area of north central Nigeria is one of incredible loss right now. You heard it referenced. They call it Middle Belt, where most Christians are being kidnapped and executed. The images and the stories are too horrible for our hearts to bear. That is why we're here today. Let's begin with that really hard part. And Reverend Makan, I come to you. What are the religious realities on the ground for Christians right now?
Well, thank you for having me join this panel. Let me first of all begin by expressing deep gratitude and appreciation to the US Congress and President Trump for turning the spotlight on Nigeria at this time, as it has to do with violence against Christians. We've been experiencing this for a quarter of a century, and it has been extremely a difficult experience for Christians. Jos, Plateau State, where I come from, is considered as the umbilical cord of Christianity in northern Nigeria. Jos is the host of Western missionaries that have had calling to come and evangelize. So Jos is the umbilical cord for missionaries. And so Jos became like the first and primary target for Islamic extremism to launch their violence. And it has been a difficult experience because whole communities, villages, have been extinct as a result of this violence. I wish we have a lot of time because just in 2 counties, there are a whole lot of like 67 villages that have literally been wiped out because of the extremist attacks, especially by the Fulani militants. And of course, the Fulani militants are the foot soldiers for forceful advance and expansion of Islam in Nigeria. I don't know if I've said enough or I'll still have the opportunity to say more.
I'll tell you this. I want to go around the panel and then I'll come back, Reverend. I want to get a good idea, and Sean, maybe you can fill us in based on what you have seen. What actually is the motive for killing particularly Christians? I mean, you can say, and I love the way that Nicki Minaj put it, this is not about picking sides, but it is about faith, and more Christians than anyone in that nation are being executed. Why?
That's absolutely right. And much of it started from 2009 with Boko Haram, when they became militant, began attacking, and as Ambassador Walt said, began kidnapping schoolgirls. That continues now, even to today, to raise funds or to buy weapons and all sorts of things. It could have started earlier when the Sharia criminal laws were passed. We're supporting a case right now at the Supreme Court of Nigeria that's being heard right now, so this is wonderful timing, to help overturn the death penalty blasphemy laws there. There's a young Sufi man, actually, Yahya Sharif Aminu, who's facing the death penalty for alleged blasphemy for song lyrics. So it could have started then.
For song lyrics?
For song lyrics shared over WhatsApp. That's absolutely right. At the Supreme Court, September 25th, a Kano State lawyer said they plan to execute this young man for alleged blasphemy. So it could have started there. In the last 5 years, though, we've seen an extreme rise in that Middle Belt region. Thousands of Christians killed every single year, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, and now with 7,000 just this year. And since the president's designation, at least 78 have been killed across many states. When they come into these villages, they shout Allahu Akbar, they attack the churches first. I visited with one of the communities, a number of the villages that had faced these attacks just south of Jos, and spoke with a new pastor there because the previous pastor had been beheaded and his head was found behind a church. But they were still worshiping there that same morning. We went to another church where they had come back from the internally displaced persons camps, which were horrible. They were so terrible. They said, we're going to risk it being with these militants there. And I enter this church, it's empty, there's a white shining cross there, and there's no roof because it was burned off. And all of a sudden, hundreds of villagers come in and begin singing hymns, praising God. And it was just, you go there and we say we want to help them, but they're a witness to us as well, of the power of their faith, of the power of Christ. So what they are going through is unimaginable across Plateau, Benue, Taraba, but their faith is so strong. That's a great encouragement that we can actually turn the tide of this persecution.
And Sarah, it's because of that so much is at stake here. I mean, if we let those lights of faith go out, and I know the Pope has even addressed this issue because Nigeria has the largest number of Catholics in all of Africa, and they're killing them. And so and by the way, I'm one of those journalists who talks about our faith openly, so if people are wondering, now they know. But I pray about this because covering it seems endless at this point. So you're looking at this, what makes a difference now?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here and for the voice that you so often give these issues. I'm grateful for that. I have to say to you, my sister, thank you, because your voice, and this is a direct answer to this question, we need people of faith and of courage like you who have platforms to stand up. And we're just so grateful. And I pray that you're blessed and that any persecution you face, you join a good list of those who've come before us who were persecuted for their faith. So thank you. The reality is it is an incredibly dangerous situation, not just for Christians, but for all of Nigerians. And we see the rise in the abduction of girls in particular. There's a reason for that, right? Boko Haram essentially means Western education forbidden. And so these young girls are in school because they are Christian and they're allowed to go to school. And I've gone and seen this happened in Iraq when ISIS committed a genocide against Christians there and Yazidis. They went after the women and children in the horrific situation that these women find themselves in. And now we're seeing it here in Nigeria. And somebody has to say something. We have to use our voice. I'm so grateful that the president continues to speak about this. And for the record, this is not the first time he has done so. In 2018, when he met with then Nigerian President Buhari at the White House, he brought it up then, both publicly and then privately. And we saw the Nigerian government turn a little bit. I think they noticed, somebody's watching, and that made them a little nervous. Sadly, things didn't completely change, though the president did designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern in 2020. That was unfortunately undone by the following administration. But this is not a new thing, and I think to Ambassador Waltz's comments earlier, this isn't for politics. This is the right thing to do. The CPC designation opens a lot of levers and doors for us diplomatically and otherwise to really, pressure the Nigerian government to do what it needs to do and protect its own people.
You say it's not political. Politics, unfortunately, are part of everything. And so the politics being played here within that country, I have a lot of questions for the Nigerian president, why it takes so much pressure just to acknowledge that there's a problem. He has not yet engaged his military to stop these 22 groups of terrorists, many of them aligned with ISIS. Now, we know how to deal with ISIS. It takes a military to deal with ISIS. There's no diplomatic engagement with ISIS. So I have a lot of questions around that. And in the meantime, people die. So in the last 4 or 5 years, 4 years under the last President Biden, the country of particular concern, the CPC designation, was wiped away. And imagine what terrorists do in that time. They build, they feast, they're like scorpions. Reverend McCann, I want to come back to you and ask you about all of the people who are dying, because Sarah's right about this. We know historically when one group is targeted, those who would even try to help or be neutral around that group are sometimes caught and executed as well. Is that a situation that could spread beyond the borders of Nigeria?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, our borders are so porous, and we have all sorts of people migrate into the country unchecked. We don't know where they're coming from, but from the experience in country, we know that a lot of them come with harm, in their hands and on their feet. And it's been so dangerous for those who speak up against these ills and these massive attacks that take place, because they too become targets of these insurgents. But the problem is, how do we continue to keep quiet, when people are being killed day after day? Just within the last 3 weeks, there have been multiple attacks in Plateau, in southern Kaduna, in Benue, with 9 out of 15 attacks in Plateau State. And that simply shows that, they believe that if they crush Plateau, they will crush Christianity, not just in the north, but in the whole of West Africa. And so we need help. We do need help internationally, because these radical groups are also internationally connected with other radical groups. This is why, the announcement by President Trump and what the US Congress has done has rekindled hope in Christians and even moderate Muslims who themselves have recently been victims of the attacks of the extremists. And so we are looking forward to some definite action being taken. The statement of our president about the situation is unfortunate, and we have minorities like that are in their comfort zones, and they are the naysayers, and some of them benefit directly or indirectly from the misfortunes that has been befallen millions in this country. So we do need international intervention, whichever way it's going to come. Millions of Nigerians are looking up to the Western nations for intervention.
Well, look, I know the clergy are like yourself. They are expressing gratitude for the American president who sees the suffering. Catholic Bishop Wilfred Shikba Angabi told Reuters, "I am happy that my cry, my prayers were answered, and I am particularly happy that the world has drawn the attention of Nigeria to look into the problem that is going on." Sean, I read a little bit about your background and how you see this kind of playing out. Is this about a caliphate? Why do they kill Christians? Is it a religious, spiritual warfare that we're seeing now waged on one side?
I believe it absolutely is. And we talked about the IS ideology or the Al-Qaeda ideology, and that since that anybody who stands in the face of a totalizing and violent extremist view shouldn't be allowed to exist. They should be stamped out and wiped out. And of course, it means that you can also take their land. It means you can take their wives and their girls. You can take all those different things. But that's why you're going after it, right? Just because, climate change doesn't cause people to behead each other, right? These different excuses when the attackers themselves say we're aligned with IS, when they themselves say we will kill all Christians. The Christians who see that and experience that every day, they believe them because they know what's happening. And many of those communities, they feel like they're totally defenseless, that they don't have people listening. When they give early warnings to local army or law enforcement, and 90% of the time, nothing happens. 90% of the time.
Why do you think that is? Why isn't the military engaged? Why aren't the law enforcement? Is that the Nigerian government that's saying don't, is that a no-go zone because they don't want to get involved?
I think there certainly are some kinds of politics that may be involved in that. It's hard to say without being in those kinds of conversations. But the reality is that those early warnings are not being responded to, and dozens after dozens get killed because nobody goes and answers those warnings. Again, there's a big case, it was a Supreme Court case involving a Christian farmer named Sunday Jackson. He was attacked, slashed on his throat and on his legs by a Fulani militant on his own farm. He tried to run and escape, he couldn't. So he got in this fighting match with him and was able to kill his assailant. He got taken and convicted of first-degree murder. That was upheld at the Supreme Court. He's facing the death penalty for defending himself. That's how defenseless the Christian communities feel. When you go out and you see the Fulani militants that have weapons upon weapons, that begin to have drone technology, all sorts of things.
Where is that coming from?
That it seems to be coming from the porous borders that the Reverend has mentioned.
Wow.
But it is something where the Christian communities, they feel besieged. And so to have the U.S., to have people like Ms. Minaj speak out and say, we have to stop that. If the government is not willing to do it by themselves, then they need that pressure from the international community. It doesn't need to just be the U.S. It doesn't need to just be us. It should be the entire United Nations. It should be all within West Africa, all within Africa, in Europe, and around the world, because more Christians are killed there in Nigeria year after year than any other country, all other countries combined. And it's an atrocity. It's outrageous. It has to stop.
Sarah, listening to all of that, and thank you for that detail on what the battle is like, both legally and spiritually. I think of those young people in Nigeria, half the population under 18, most of them under 15. What happens to the future of Nigeria if you kill the children?
When I hear that, I think of one of the reasons why it's important for the United States to be a leader on this. I believe Secretary Rubio said that if something doesn't make us safer, stronger, and more prosperous, we're not going to focus on it, right? And I see this issue certainly something of safety and security for us. That young population of people, those that are left, if we don't step in here and say this is unacceptable, then we allow radicalization to take place, and that country will be far more dangerous in the future than it even is today. So, from my perspective, this is an imperative for the U.S. government that we say the right thing and that we impose sanctions, that we use the levers and the tools that the CPC designation provides the president and the administration, and try to impact change here so that we don't see a worse off Nigeria in the future.
Can you go into a detail just a little bit? So that the CPC designation, what does that allow President Trump to do that maybe we don't know about?
I think there are like 15 different levers that it essentially opens up. Diplomatic pressure, right? Again, I reference the President's comments to President Buhari back in 2018. Mm-hmm. Even him just saying the word, what's going on with the Christians in Nigeria? I hear you're killing Christians. It made a difference. So there's that. Sanctions, that we can open new sanctions, particularly against individuals who are witnessing this violence and doing nothing about it. So we can impose new sanctions beyond those that may already exist. And Sean, help me here. My dear friend Sean, who is so much more eloquent than I am, I'm so grateful to be here with him too. So diplomatic pressure, sanctions, there's a number of things that can be done, but I honestly believe the Nigerian government reacts most to the pressure, the public pressure that they feel. Right. There's a lot of industry there. They don't want to risk that and lose that. Oil, there's business. They, once you become like on this bad list, companies don't want to go there and operate from there any longer. That'll be something they feel.
Also, I think the other thing is, the CPC designation is a wake-up call, and there are those things like removing different kinds of aid, saying we're not going to support these on military efforts. But the U.S. has been a long-time partner with Nigeria. We want Nigeria and West Africa to be secure and prosperous, and that's a wonderful thing for both of our countries. And so I think it is an opportunity, if they can stop the denials and change course and take these things seriously, get things to the middle belt, then those sanctions don't necessarily have to happen, right? And that'll improve their own economy, it'll improve their food supply, it'll improve the lives of their everyday citizens, whether Christian or Muslim, any of those things. So I think it is an opportunity that the president is offering, but he wants the denials to stop.
Well, it's interesting because we talk about Nigerians' rich oil history and potentially future. They refine a lot of oil. We actually, the United States, are supplying them with some crude. So it's interesting timing to see another oil-rich country, maybe the richest in the world, Saudi Arabia's crown prince at the White House right now. Nigeria no doubt pays attention to our politics and our diplomacy. So I look for this day to make a lot of news on a lot of different fronts, and Nigeria is at the heart of it for a lot of reasons. Reverend McCann, I made a note when you were talking before, and I had written this previously when I read your bio, but then I underlined it. Talk to us about peacemakers in the Bible. And those of us who are Christians, those of us with strong faith, my husband is Jewish, we are ecumenical, we serve the same God. Talk to us about the role that we can play as the faithful in peacemaking at this moment for Nigeria.
Well, I'm a firm believer in the sanctity of human life. Our Creator assigns equal value to our lives regardless of our race or color. And so I believe that we ought to equally value humanity. I preach peace with God. I also work for peace amongst men. I've been in it the past 25 years, and we haven't given up. While this violence takes place, we still preach peace. We are still open for peace. And we encourage that, without peace, there can be no development. And this is why we are crying out for intervention, because the violence is reducing the integrity and nobility of our nation. Let me use the opportunity to also call on the government of my country, pleading with the government of my country to humble itself and accept help that is coming from a stronger ally like the United States, and hopefully other Western nations too, because they have a stake in Nigeria. Like Boko Haram, like you said earlier, is anti-Western values. So it's anti-Western values, including Christianity, including democracy, and so if the West can unite to see that Nigeria is a hub, all right, of upholding Western values, which also aligns with what the Bible teaches, then we can have a world that enjoys peace, and we can have development, and the world will be a better place for everyone. No one wins when violence just takes over everywhere. There is no progress, no development. This is part of the reason why the Nigerian economy is still passing through terrible challenges today, because we don't have sufficient peace. Investors are very, very wary about coming to invest in the country because of the rise in violence. And so we are all for it, and I believe the Christians in Nigeria are for peace. We want peace so that there can be progress and development, and everyone can go about living their lives without apprehension of the other person coming on them and taking away their lives wishfully and willfully.
What do you say, Reverend McCann, to young people that you see in Nigeria? How do you give them the strategy to go forward and their prayers and their hope for the future with so much happening against them?
I didn't quite get that.
What do you say to young people, young Christians who know that the future could be bleak because of how they believe? How do you keep them hopeful? What is the strategy for that? What do you pray with them and for them about?
Yes, definitely prayer is key, and we haven't given up on that. Every day we pray for our nation, for God's intervention, for God to send help. We also try to engage them, to engage young people, bring them together, talk about conflict and peace building, and see how we can be better Christians, be better citizens, and love each other. Love, even the Bible teaches, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. So we want to continue to instill that truth in our young people, but there is a limit to which they would accept and go by that when the government is failing to live up to its own responsibility of protecting lives and property of citizens. We don't encourage our young people to take the laws into their hands and go about killing and destroying properties. But the government should also do its own part.
What you said is so important, because there is a line, there's a limit that people can live through, and then they want to fight. And just as my mother taught me to, and taught all of us, to let others praise you, sometimes you have to let others help you fight. Like, you can't always do it on your own, and it's not always the might that does it, it's what you're talking about. It's setting the parameters that give you a better future. So as you look at this, we're potentially going to lose a generation of people in one nation if they don't get a handle on this. Is that how you see it?
I think that if the insecurity doesn't stop, you could have lots of systematic collapse. If you think of the Middle Belt, where it's the breadbasket of the country, if you're losing 40% of your farm and then another 40% the next year on a widespread scale across the area, how do people eat that way? How do they live that way? When there's millions of people living in internally displaced
16 million right now.
It's enormous.
Displaced.
Absolutely. And they have nothing. How do you build a life that way? How do you build a business or a family? You've already lost your home and you have nothing to look forward to, and you don't know when you're going to leave. But there's such bad conditions that people will still try to go back to their destroyed homes just to build a life. These are people who want to live, as the Reverend said, build peaceful and prosperous communities, who want to work hard, who pray and love their families, and they're unable to have the basic elements of life because of the lack of security, because of the lack of response, because of the lack of recognition of what they're going through and saying what it is, that they are facing religious persecution, they're facing targeted persecution. And I think just getting to that recognition, saying we're going to respond when we hear that there's attacks against you, we're going to help you get back to your homes and rebuild those things. Just saying those things and beginning to move on those, prosecuting attackers, I think you could see a pretty dramatic drop in attacks. But if the impunity continues, as you mentioned earlier, what message does that give you? It means you can attack and attack and attack again, and nothing will happen to you.
What do you say when the government argues, when the president argues, no, they have religious freedom. It is promised in the Nigerian Constitution. I don't know if you read that recently, but it was in the headlines. And so I'm reading deeper on it, and I'm like, well, so what do they tell the radical Islamists? Like, that they also have the freedom to do what they do, but the Christians don't?
The reality is that in northern Nigeria, is it 12 states under Sharia law? That's not freedom of religion.
And that's sanctioned by the government.
They are allowed to practice Sharia law there.
You'd be hard-pressed to find any country in the world that has a constitution that doesn't look pretty good, that has lots of nice words in it, right? Look at the Chinese constitution, or look at the Soviet constitution, or things like that, and you see all sorts of protections. But that's a piece of paper, as Antonin Scalia used to say. It's whether you live up to it. It's whether you live up to it by saying we're not going to discriminate in favor of one community or against another community. It's when you say that you can speak freely about your faith, where you can go to a church or to a mosque and not worry about that. And there have been some wonderful imams. There's an imam in the north who hid 300 Christians because they were being chased by terrorists. But that's the thing, 300 Christians were being targeted by terrorists at that same time. And so that kind of example of religious harmony is what needs to be protected.
That's amazing, though.
It is amazing.
Right
yes,
there.
Absolutely. And that can be strengthened. But you have to recognize where the problems are first.
How do we help someone like that? I mean, this is what we saw, and I don't like to compare atrocities, because everything lives its own place in history. So I'm not going to do that. What I will say is, just in the spirit of what you just showed, that there are lights in every situation. There were lights in the Holocaust. Some of that happened where people were sheltered and given God's grace because they felt the Spirit moved them to do so. So how do we find those people? Reverend, do you have any thoughts on that?
Those who would provide like support, or
those who would protect Christians.
Oh yeah, well, this is where the problem is in our country. Because of the escalation of this violence and the slow or non-response of the government authorities, a lot of the Christian communities are now feeling like they have to adopt self-defense, which also the Constitution provides for. But my other panelist says a piece of paper, because whenever the communities under attack find some way to want to defend themselves, then that's when the law suddenly gathers some energy to go after them. But the aggressors, who seem to have a reservoir of these ammunitions and weapons, keep coming round to attack the communities and to destroy lives. We have mass graves literally in every community. I've been there. I've been in the trenches. I've been to these places. You see mass graves here and there, and so how does that work? There is no justice. There is no justice. And unless justice is seen to be done, there is no amount of simply just talking, and we're not seeing it being done, that is going to help the situation.
I'm going to wrap up with this. I know I mentioned the huge Catholic population in Nigeria, 35 million Catholics. 2 days ago, the Pope declared, and this is a quote, "Thinking of Bangladesh, Nigeria, Mozambique, Sudan, and other countries from which news often arises of attacks on communities and places of worship." It's exactly what you're talking about. This is starting to migrate now. And that's putting so many more Christians under pressure. I feel like this is a tipping point for us, and I want to thank the ambassador, Mike Waltz, for bringing us all together, and Nicki Minaj for being part of this worship moment for us to understand that we're on the precipice of being able to help, and we can't miss our time. So thank you all for your time. Reverend, thank you, and Sarah and Sean, a pleasure to speak with you today and take all those many questions. You're very graceful. Thank you all. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. What an honor to be here. Harris, what a powerful panel that was, very informative panel. Sarah and Sean and the Reverend, full of insight and knowledge, and I learned a lot. And to be honest, I'm very bad at preparation, so I didn't prepare any remarks, but your panel gave me some inspiration to follow. And I did not know that the Biden administration removed the CPC designation in Nigeria and basically turning a blind eye to the terrible persecution that's been happening to Christians in that country. And as I was also sitting there thinking about, the previous administration was under had no ability to lecture other nations when it comes to treatment of Christians. The Biden administration also targeted Christians in our country, whether it was shutting down churches in the name of protection from a disease, or if it was putting people who purchased Bibles on a watch list by the FBI, or if it was hijacking Easter Sunday to rename it Trans Visibility Day. Do you guys remember that one? So how could that administration go to another country and lecture them on how they're treating Christians when our leaders had no respect for Christians in our country? And so that's why I'm so proud of this administration. We are finally able to be respected on the world stage again, thanks to President Donald J. Trump. And Vice President Vance and Marco Rubio and Ambassador Waltz, who are unapologetic about America's founding. America is a Christian country. It was founded as a Christian country, and it will always be a Christian country. And we are not ashamed of that. We are proud of that. And President Trump is doing incredible work here in our country to defend religious liberties, and I'm very proud of him. But I'm also grateful that he uses his platform and his powerful voice to raise awareness about the atrocities that are happening to Christians all across the globe. And I know today's topic was on Nigeria, but other countries are also falling short of protecting religious liberties, including Sudan and some other African nations. But it's so incredibly important to use your voice to speak out against these injustices. And Ambassador, I'm grateful for you organizing this. And Nicki, what an incredible testimony it is to have you here. I think the entire country is appreciative of you stepping forward in this moment. You spoke beautifully and elegantly, and your words will resonate in the hearts and minds of millions and millions of people all across this globe. You should be very proud of yourself for having the courage to step forward in this time. I don't think other people in your industry have the courage or the brains, really. You're very smart. Some of your rivals are not so smart, believe it or not. But you are very impressive, and we're grateful that you used your voice to show up today. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Please welcome back Ambassador Michael Waltz.
Oh, thank you. If I could Matthew, grab the rest of those bags. I just have a couple of gifts for our panelists for coming. Sarah, come on up. We've started a new look here, if you haven't seen them. Everybody knows UNGA, the UN General Assembly. Well, we've started a new acronym called MUNGA. Make the UN great again. I thought it was pretty funny. I guess everybody doesn't think it's as funny.